guys, welcome to Rock Hard Riffs. This is the guitar channel for the self-taught. If you're new to our channel, check out some of our other videos, and if you like what you see, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. And make sure that you hit the bell so that you're notified of every video that we put out. And that's Monday through Friday. Okay guys, we're going to talk about the Beatles, how they had, why they had, and what was the whole deal about such an impact that the Beatles had. Are they overrated? What is all this talk about this? Now my son, who's going to be 24 this year, said that a lot of people his age constantly talk about how, well, you know, they're way overrated. What did the Beatles really do? What's, you know, it is what it is, and it's from the 60s, you know. But I'll tell you what, the Beatles had such a gigantic impact on so many different things in so many different ways. Not just music, but fashion and the language that we use, and so many different things that have affected just about everything that you almost see coming out from then on in music. Now, I think a huge reason why the Beatles had done so many firsts and were so innovative, first off, is you think that at the time, this would be the late 50s when they actually got together, and then it was in 62, of course, when Ringo joined, but nevertheless, they were playing rock standards, American rock standards, stuff that came over on the boats over to Liverpool, records that sailors brought over that they had picked up in the United States or wherever they happened to be. And that's how they were exposed to. So it wasn't so much of a grassroots thing there. They were exposed to American rock and roll, and primarily black music. Now, this was something brand new to these folks. They'd never heard anything like this before, just as Americans hadn't when it first came out. Except at this time, rock and roll was kind of start to wane. It was dying out a bit to a lot of the folk stuff and a lot of the sugary, candy-coated pop that were coming out at the time. So the Beatles were like a breath of fresh air. They were about a kick in the pants at the time. And I think what's most important, guys, is that we keep things in perspective, okay? John Kennedy, our president, the American president at the time, had just been assassinated, what was it, 2-3 months before they had come here. And their music was just starting to be exposed at about that time here in America. So it gave people something else to think about, for one, besides the murder of the president, which affects the world. You know, any world leader being assassinated or whatever, that sends reverberations to the whole world, right? Nevertheless, so there's that, and also rock and roll is dying at the time. The Beatles bring it back, and as well as the rest of the British invasion, because they were being exposed to American rock. They loved it so much they start playing it, and then we were re-exposed to it through the Brits. So let's talk about some of the things that the Beatles did through the years that were so profound. Some of the things that made so much difference, the things that changed things from then on. And man, I came up with at least 16 things here, so let's go through it quickly. Number one, long hair. Now, people say that long hair, what do you mean long hair? Oh yes, that was long hair in the early days when they first came out. No, buzz cuts were the thing at the time. Like a marine cut, think about that. The Beatles' haircuts were outrageous, and they got a lot of attention. Now you think about that from that point on. All of the things with hairstyles and all the things, oh my. Let's go to the next. How about the misspelled name? B-E-A-T-L-E-S instead of B-E-E-T-L-E-S. Now that was taken in part from Buddy Holly and the Crickets, so there's an insect. But they wanted to take that name and add like beat music to it. They wanted to have it kind of a meaning, like the beat, the Beatles. So that's how you get that name. Very cool. Now think of all the bands after that, all of the different spellings, Led Zeppelin, Def Leppard, and on and on and on and on, the different misspellings of names. The next thing that's really profound is how the British invasion, and most especially, of course, the Beatles, how they sounded so American. So both sides of the ocean loved it so much because they thought it sounded so much like their own. Especially Ringo's drumming, they said. He sounded like such an American drummer. Now here's number 4, but this is the kicker. This is the one that really launched 1,000 ships, and that is that they wrote their own music. This was basically unheard of at the time. And that was a decision that the Beatles made early on when they had met George Martin. They told him, yeah, we don't have any problem covering some of our old stuff that we did in the clubs, but we want to write our own music. And from a certain point on, it was all their own original music. So that was a first in music history, not just rock and roll history. Okay guys, let's go on to the next. Paul McCartney brings the bass guitar back to rock and roll. It was waning. It was kind of all high-pitched, sugary stuff, and Paul brought the bass back. It was loud, it was booming, and it was beautiful. Next, the Soaring Harmonies. John, Paul, and George, their voices blended so perfectly. It's very reminiscent, of course, of the Everly Brothers, which they did very consciously, but their harmonies were so beautiful. Now, next, they had 3 lead singers and writers later on in the band. So think of that. 4 guys, and 3 of them are lead singers and writers of their own music. What bands had that? That just did not occur at that time. Again, perspective at that time. These are the things that the Beatles did that led other people to do the same things. That's what you call impact or influence. Next, they possibly recorded the first ever feedback on a record. That's according to John Lennon on the song I Feel Fine, if you listen to the very beginning. Now next, this is very, very cool. The Beatles were first to plug a guitar into a Leslie speaker. And the effect is now what we call a univibe. Very neat effect. Also, the Beatles were first at recording anything backwards. Okay, now how many things do you hear backwards that have been redone over and over and over? And that would have been from the song Rain. That was where they first did it, and they did it several times after that. Okay, how about more, guys? How about the very first concept album with Sgt. Pepper? Okay, there's another first, and a huge one at that. How about this one? This is kind of funny. I threw this in just for fun. The first to quote-unquote challenge religion with John Lennon's "We are bigger than Jesus" comment that he made. Boy, did that cause a ruckus. Next, we have the first rock group to win a Grammy. Again, that's the first rock group ever to win a Grammy with the song Yesterday. Okay, these are all firsts, guys, and big momentous things. They were also, I threw this in for fun. Now, Mrs. Beans, she is Filipina. She is from the Philippines, and so we threw this in together just kind of as a laugh. That the Beatles were the first to snub a world leader in Imelda Marcos, the First Lady of the Philippines. Of course, it was completely unintentional. It was a confusion in schedules, but they were the first to snub a world leader and live to tell the story. Another one is the Paul is Dead conspiracy that just went on and on and on, got outrageous. And some of it is just so funny. It's cool to follow, but, of course, it's all a big joke. And finally, one last thing I can just off the top of my head come up with, and that is lyrics, lyrics, lyrics. Some of the greatest lyrics. A Day in the Life, Yesterday. So many great lyrics. Not to mention, guys, 21 #1 hits. Okay, that record still stands to this day. So if you're wondering what impact the Beatles have had on the music scene, the music industry, music itself, I'm just kind of scratching the surface there. Some other folks, please pitch in the comment section. Tell us some other things that I may have missed. I'm sure I've missed a lot of things. But guys, spread this around. Share this video to younger people you may know, or if you're a younger person, share this with your friends. I'm not here to lecture anybody on anything. I just wanted to inform, especially younger folks, who are wondering what the hoopla is about the Beatles. Well, that just scratches the surface there. And of course, all of the great music. Alright guys, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Please subscribe if you have not already. And we'll see you next video.